Hello. It's been nearly 2 weeks since I recorded my first episode, and I had this scheduled in my calendar for the last 6 days. I've sat down to record it. I quit halfway through and been battling myself to do this, and the old creative perfectionist. And I find it interesting when you're leveling up in life and you're challenging yourself to do something, especially when it's aligned with something creative or a bit of a soul or heart calling. That resistance gets stronger and those voices get louder. And I've had my battles this week, but I'm here. So it makes me think of a great book called The War of Art by Stephen K. Pressfield. And I've got a quote here from him. He has a whole chapter about resistance, and it summarizes what I just said. The more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel towards pursuing it. And as I said in that last episode, this whole podcast, digital journal, conversation about the human experience, it's a really vulnerable thing to do. And it's something that's been on my heart for quite a few years that I've resisted. And every day, without fail, since 2019, I've thought about this every single day. And I had read that book back in 2018 and I knew what it meant. I could feel it in my bones. And I've made all sorts of excuses and now I'm doing it. And after that first one, I felt incredible. I was like, yes, I'm finally doing this. And then I got closer to the next week when I had it scheduled in my calendar to record another episode. And I knew what I wanted to talk about. I have a story here I've written a couple of years ago that I want to share. But that resistance got stronger every day. And then, yeah, all of that happened. But anyway, I'm here and perfectly imperfect. I'm going to read this. So this is a story I wrote about a reflection on life, spirituality, being a human, all of that, a little bit of religion. The story explains itself. So here we go. The lessons never stop if we choose to see them and seek them. Life, it seems, is this continuous process of unlearning, of undoing, of unpacking. Being a human is weird. It's this paradoxical, confusing, wondrous mix of ups and downs, lefts and rights, forwards and backwards. I try to make sense of it all, to find meaning in it all. I've been obsessed with that since I was 14. At that age, I had this strange and life-jolting experience at a Christian youth camp. My family was a Christian family. I went to a Christian school, most of my schooling, but I do not like religion. I find churches to be these oppressive, hypocritical organizations full of self-righteous, guilt-tripping folk. But as my late grandfather would always say, there's good and bad in all. I believe that to be true. And it certainly was in this church-led youth group. Just like me trying to make sense of it all, to find meaning in it all, I think we all do this. And religion to me is simply people trying to find meaning and make sense of it all. Something that brings me peace in life and in chaotic moments is at the end of the day, none of us have a bloody clue. We think and feel so certain that we do, but really we're all just here in this beautiful craziness, bumping around, trying to figure it all out and do what feels best for ourselves. Back to the youth group story. There's good and bad in all. There's spiritual Christians, those that are connected to something greater than their egos and earthly selves. And there's religious Christians. In this sense of the word religious, those that go through the notions and motions of what they're supposed to do without much deeper connection than a superficial surface practice they do religiously. The leader of this youth group was someone I'd put in the former. So here I am, this 14-year-old kid, growing up in a Christian family, going to church each Sunday and completely not interested nor connected to church or religion at all. It wasn't honest enough for me. It lacked integrity. It rubbed against the grain of my own moral compass. And in hindsight, it disappointed me. So I grew up without my dad. I had a pretty shitty experience of what a stepdad was or what a father was through my stepdad. And always, and I still do, seek out mentors that I can look up to. And an example of such disappointment that I had in church as a kid was that the pastor and his wife of the church I went to got divorced. He was controlling and abusive towards her. She ended up cheating on him and then left him for the other dude. And I was close to their family, was friends with their kids, and it was disappointing. And as I've grown, I've learned to be more understanding that we are all humans trying to make our way through this crazy experience called life. And I've learned not to put people on pedestals. And in the wise words of the, I think, Japanese author, Taro Gomi, everyone poops. All right, back to the youth group story. I'm 14, my family had just moved, we changed churches, not my thing. Church, nor meeting new church people. I moved a lot as a kid, and I think I lived in maybe 30 houses, went to 7 schools. So just a little side note, I changed churches a lot. So anyhow, my mum gets me to start going to the youth group there at the church. Fortunately, there were some cool people that I met there, and I liked the youth pastors, so I kept going, mostly staying on the fringes of the group. At some stage, they planned this youth camp. I reluctantly attended. It was a few nights away, staying in these cabins by the beach, which wasn't bad at all. The program or plan is a mix of religious stuff, or was a mix of religious stuff, and fun games and activities. After a day of activities and games, we would have some dinner, followed by some church stuff in the hall. I attended, sitting comfortably at the back of the room, playing on the fringe that I had done with church for so many years, as I had done with church for so many years. There would be songs and sing-alongs, followed by some preaching stuff that I generally zoned out to. At the end of the preaching, they would always invite people up for some prayer. This was always something that made me feel uncomfortable. My own judgment was this over-emotional, soppy shit that losers would go up for in hopes that they would be renewed, and then magically their shitty existence would be made good. That all their problems would be gone. I didn't know the term for it then, but the victim mentality was strong in these types. To put all responsibility for your well-being and life on some force outside of yourself seemed like it lacked responsibility and self-reliance to me. But who was I to judge? And as life would have it, I would later learn that I did the same thing in a different way. So it's the last night of the camp. Dinner is done, and I laggardly enter the hall right before the music kicks off. I always enjoyed the music to some degree, just not the cheesy lyrics. But there were some songs that I felt connected to. Perhaps the person who wrote them from their heart. Perhaps they were more of the spiritually connected person than someone who religiously went through those notions and motions. And there's good and bad in all, right? So the music time comes to an end. The preaching starts and finishes. Then the call to come to the front to be prayed for begins. And for me, tonight is different. There's a different feeling in the air. Something stirred in me, some energy, some force, something. I felt myself with massive resistance stand up and start taking steps towards the front. What the fuck was I doing? What's going on? What is this voodoo shit? I thought to myself. I kept walking, judging myself and feeling awkward as I walked towards the front. But I kept walking. I arrived, joining others up the front, and we stood side by side as the pastors came and prayed for each of us. I closed my eyes, most likely to hide from the awkwardness I was feeling, and I waited for my turn. Kylie was the pastor who prayed for me. She was a lovely person, a vibrant soul with a big heart. As she prayed and spoke these words of life and encouragement to me and into me, something happened. A strange thing, a weird thing. I felt this gush of energy begin to fill me up. I would say it was this altered state of consciousness that somewhat took over. It was a powerful energy. I surrendered to it. It increased. So much so that I physically wanted to and needed to let go. I half fell, half lay down and simply let this feeling wash over me. It filled every cell. All the while I could see this happening, I was still thinking, what the fuck is this? Wow, this is cool. I'm not into this. But I let those voices pass and continued to surrender to this energy that put me in this altered state. After some time, it settled and I stood up. Something had shifted. Something had shifted inside me. Something had turned on. It felt like a light deep inside had turned on. Not a very bright one, but bright enough that I could now see something other than what I had always seen. Call it God, call it spirit, call it psychosomatic energy. I don't necessarily need to label it anything, but what it did was awaken something deep inside me. It sparked a deep desire to do better, whatever that meant. I wanted to improve my character, my mindset, and my life. After the church camp, the youth camp, I continued going to church for another year or so. I grappled along with life, ups and downs. I kept at it, despite going through some heavy anxiety and depression. And during this time, the youth group threw this huge underage dance party. It was open to everyone, not just the kids from my church. It seemed like the whole town was there, a good couple of hundred teens. And that was where I met Natalie. Oh my goodness. 15-year-old Luke was instantly smitten. She was this beautiful young woman with these high-set cheekbones, stunning smile, and the prettiest eyes. I somehow ended up chatting with her outside, sitting on this bench. There was something about her, an elegance, her voice, the way she spoke, the way she carried herself. I don't remember exactly what we spoke about, but I do remember, and still to this day remember, how I felt being around her. Butterflies that I'd never felt before. I remember learning that she went to the local school, a different school to me, and that she was in the same grade at school as me. She told me that her dad was a cop. I met some of her friends and remembered their names. I don't remember how we said goodbye, but I didn't get her number or a means of getting in touch with her. Shit. Rookie mistake. But what was I to know? I'd barely kissed a couple of girls before this. So now, this was back before text messaging and social media. It was the days of the landline phone, where there was one phone per household. A few days passed since the party and I couldn't stop thinking about her. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to know more about her. I had a friend, Justin, who just lived down the street from me. And he just so happened to go to the same school as her and was in the same grade. But as I found out, there were 350 kids in that grade alone. Damn. With the few clues I had of her, Justin, who shall be remembered as the greatest wingman ever, was able to help clarify and confirm that he knew just who she was. Could it be? Would he be able to help me to get in touch with her? He said he'd try, and try he did. The next day, after what seemed like an agonizingly long wait until Justin and I could meet up after we both went to our separate schools, I headed over to Justin's house. With a hopeful bounce in my step, I walked the few blocks to his apartment. Up the few flights of stairs to his front door, I ran. Knock, knock, knock. I waited. Justin answered. With a smile, he handed me a note. He did it. Natalie's number. Yes, I was stoked. Nice work, man. Step 1 done. Next up, call her. I got home. Note in hand, I prepared myself. Deep breath. I dialed the numbers. Ring, 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 ring. Someone answered the phone. In a deep and commanding voice, I heard, "Hello, Paul speaking." "Hi, this is Luke. Is Natalie there, please?" A pause. "Yeah, just a minute." Oh shit, this is it. I wait a moment. I hear the phone being picked up. Then in the most beautiful voice that perfectly juxtaposed the scary one I spoke with just a moment ago, I hear, "Hi, this is Natalie." And so too began what was the story of my first love. We dated for several months, chatting on the phone many afternoons after school, seeing each other on weekends, exploring each other and these growing feelings we had. It was the first time I had these feelings for a girl, and it was the first time I went beyond kissing. It was pure, naive, sweet, and powerful. But it was contradictory to what we were being told in church. I would spend my time with Natalie having these incredible experiences, feeling on top of the world. Then I'd be at church and hear these sermons and preachers talking about what I could and should and couldn't and shouldn't do. Two conflicting experiences. The cognitive dissonance was real. I would feel guilty and beat myself up over this for something so pure. I would struggle to reconcile that internal conflict. After some time, church got scrapped with a "fuck that" from me. I stopped going. I went out on my own, made new friends, changed schools from the Christian school after I got expelled, and I started going to the local state school, Natalie's school. Life, as it always does, changed, but the one thing that remained true and constant was my desire to grow. And that hasn't stopped to this day. It only grows stronger. It's been my North Star for so many of my life decisions. I've always sought out experiences that challenge me, that keep me on the edge of my seat and at the edge of my comfort zone. There's always something to unlearn, undo, and unpack. And as comfortable as this is, I love it. Being a human is weird. I wouldn't change a thing. The lessons never stop. It's actually really fun for me to read that story, and yeah, I think the teenage Luke inside me lights up reminiscing about that. It's such a sweet period of life, and I've gone out. I hold principles and values from Christianity. Um, I don't consider myself a Christian per se. I believe in a God or something greater than us, and I say my prayers and I live in faith. But I still don't like religion. And hey, each to their own. It brings me peace, and having faith that things will always work out for me and that they're happening for the greater good. It helps me to surrender. And there's that, it's a bit cheesy or cliched, but rejection is God's redirection. Sometimes I'll be like trying to get somewhere and do something, and the doors keep closing. So I sometimes now, not always, but now take a moment to breathe. I'm curious what resonated with you from this story, if anything. Have you had an experience like this in your life? A spiritual awakening of sorts? I don't think we just have one in life. It's a constant process, and this journey of awakening and unraveling, undoing, and remembering who we are at our essence is ongoing. And something I feel to share, I always evolve my beliefs, and my current belief, and something that's stayed with me for the last few years, has been that I think this came to me in a meditation and a journaling session, that everything, everyone, and every circumstance is a mirror shining back to us that which is unconscious within us, in order that we can let it go and heal, release, and unpack what it is, so that more of who we truly are, the goodness within, that divine, can flourish. It's like a process of trusting that the plants will grow, and that sometimes all we need to do is just weed a little bit and make sure the soil's fertile. That it's not so much about striving and pushing and this type of motivational stuff that we see a lot today. You got to strive harder to be an entrepreneur. I think sometimes it's a balance of yin and yang, and feminine and masculine, intention versus surrender. And maybe I should listen to a bit of that and have a bit of compassion for myself as well, that I don't have to do this at a set time each week. That some weeks I'll probably want to record a few more, and I can have a few of these episodes in the bank. As a side note, I've reached out to a couple of people and lining up some guests, so some well wishes for that. I hope it all unfolds, and it will, as it's meant to. And thank you for joining me on this episode that is episode 2 in a long journey of something that will just unfold organically, without a business plan, without a branding guide, just a calling and following and walking and taking steps towards that. Have a great week. Thank you.